stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, it is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. This is your Wednesday edition, and I am your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. And you can find Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can help to fund our network and our host and our shows and everything that we bring to you. So you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and go to the funding link, and you can find heirloom seeds. You can just toss us a few bucks. We also have advertising, and advertising is one of the ways that I support our network, as well as paying for the archives. Also, if you go to the link for schedule and click on Studio A, there's your choices on the schedule link is Studio A or Studio B. I'm always in Studio A. And you scroll down to Wednesday or Saturday. Wednesday is right now we're on at noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And click on it's bee with a flower. Click on the bee with the flower, that thumbnail, and it will take you to a back page where you can look up some information about me and follow some links, and also if you want to contact me for any reason. So my show, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes, has two editions. It has Wednesdays and Saturdays. Wednesdays I just went over. Saturday is at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So yeah. Also, I'm always looking for donations too to help kind of do some of the work that I'm doing. So you can always help me at PayPal, consciousnessofelconomics@gmail.com. Also, you can contact me at that email address as well. All right. So today for our Wednesday edition, I have somebody that I've been asking for 2 years to come on the show, and I'm just going to kind of give a brief thing about her and her husband. So I met her in 2008 through some mutual friends. Oh, hold on a second.
Right. So we started looking to see what areas had affordable land, and we're in the San Luis Valley. And so this came up during some searches, and I started looking at it and learning about it. There's a huge agricultural community here. The growing season is short, technically desert. It's been a learning process for me because, like I said, I learned my skills in the Midwest where farming was a little bit easier. But I've learned a lot about how to build soil in the desert and how to manage things using less water. And I think it's just been appealing to me, the challenges, because, if it were too easy, I might lose interest. I don't know. But I've really enjoyed actually learning all the things I've learned about soil moisture and different techniques for adding more compost, soil moisture, and really being able to build habitat and, transform small sections of the desert into abundant food gardens. So, and of course you can't.
Hey, Dawn. Hey
Yeah.
Don, I have kind of a weird problem with your sound, so I'm gonna toss you off and bring you back on.
Okay.
Okay, so just hold on 1 second. Let me just
Okay.
hold on. It's like always. Hold on a second here.
You can always call me too. I've got the phone right here.
Yeah, so we just kind of were having some weird problems with Studio A. So let me see if it gets better. It just your voice all of a sudden started kind of going in and out.
Okay. Could be my microphone. I don't know.
No, it sounds like it's okay now.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
Okay. So anyway, we really were drawn to the valley. We had traveled through it before when we went on vacations, like down to New Mexico, and the views are amazing. It didn't scare me that the winters here are really harsh. It can get to be 40 below zero, without even trying. And that's not appealing to some people, but being from Michigan, that didn't really scare me. So, it is kind of challenging to try to keep warm. We use wood and solar for heat, and we don't have, any other kind of forced air furnace or anything like that. So, you kind of learn how to keep things warm, keep your water liquid instead of from freezing. And, it's just been a really amazing journey, and we're just really glad to be here. That, and when we started looking into it, it's got a lot of diversity. There's a lot of different people here, some doing what we do, some people who've been here for generations. It's a really diverse place, and as a geologist, I really enjoyed learning about the geology of this valley. We've got volcanics, we've got a mountain uplift event, we've got the wonderful aquifers here that have supported artesian wells. So there's a lot of really fascinating things that, hold my interest really well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. So on the record, it might be a little in and out, and I don't know if the first part of the show actually got on. So, but I just want to say, look, I'm talking to, you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio. I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I'm talking to Dawn Anderson and her Facebook page for her little homestead and everything that they do. They post photos and update is Peppercorn Ranch Creations. And so you can find her on Facebook as well. So we were just talking about why she chose the area. Her and her husband chose the area that they did in Colorado in order, to buy land and then start their homesteading life. So is there anything that, do you feel like that on some things maybe you had more of an interesting learning curve? Is there anything like specifically you wish that maybe you would have known before you like moved on to the land? I always ask these kind of questions, so that listeners can kind of, think about, preparation or what they might want to prepare for if they want to move on to some land and, have a kind of a pioneering lifestyle.
That's a really good question. I'm by nature a planner. I try to think things through pretty thoroughly. And, it's either a strength or a weakness depending on how you look at it, because I can take a lot of time thinking about something before I make a decision. And in this case, I did a lot of research. So not only did I have some skills from my childhood, but now I also have my own mini library on sustainability and, a book on alternative building, a book on solar heaters, a book on raising chickens. I've got all kinds of things, and I've just spent my time reading. When I was working full time as a geologist, I worked downtown and commuted on a bus, and so I had a lot of time to read, and I would recommend that. I know there's also YouTube videos and a lot of other resources out there, but I think just getting as much information as you can before diving in is really important. And then of course the way you really learn it is by doing it. So you can read as much as you want, but when you do it, that's when you're going to learn the real challenges that you didn't anticipate. And, just being a problem solver, we've had to work our way through some of those things. I don't think there's really any way to prepare for those kinds of things. They're just little tips and tricks you learn along the way. I think my background in geology and all my field work benefited me as well, because I sort of knew a little bit about construction from having worked as basically a construction material tester. So these kinds of skills have also been useful. I just think that, sometimes you just have to jump in and do it.
Yeah, no, good answer. No, people always ask me, like, how do I, figure out, with my projects, like where I want my land at. And it actually, as I went to school, I'm actually really glad that I didn't buy anything before, I knew a lot, because now I'm like at the back end of this long period of education with, environment, and now I'm in herbal medicine. And one of the things that came up when I was involved with biodynamics, getting my stuff there at Steiner College, going through those courses and getting that done. But one of the concepts that kept coming up was this concept about, how deep is your soil depth? And they would talk about a lot of the different plants that we use in biodynamics. And, like even just comfrey needs, in order for a comfrey plant to be a really good medicinal plant, it needs what it needs. It needs a good environment. It needs water. It needs to be living with other plants. And one of the major things that it needs is it needs to drop a 15-foot root. So if you're in a place where, where you don't have much soil depth. So I kind of, for a period of time, got really obsessed with looking at, like Google satellite, and they have all these different things that can tell you what the soil depths in different areas are. And I was just really surprised by that, in order to grow certain kind of plants that I've been trained to use, for regenerating soil or health or whatever else, like, I'm going to have at least soil depth so that I can actually grow the plants. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to even grow the plants. So things like that, sometimes you're not aware of. So you get a cheap property, but it has a lot of rock and clay. It's like, well, you're probably never really ever going to grow anything successfully there, especially if it rains a lot, because then the water doesn't really dry up, the roots rot, things like that. So, I'm sure that you guys, I
would give up on a property like that, because there's a lot you can do with raised beds and other techniques. But you're absolutely right.
It's tough.
Doing your homework before buying property is crucial for making sure it's going to be usable for what you want to do with it.
Yeah. And I've battled the rock, here in Nevada where I'm at. There's a lot of heavy rock, clay, and sand. And I've build urban farm projects for people here. And, like, I'm not interested in doing it anymore. I mean, we do raised beds, bring everything in, try to create like a full circle, as much as possible. But yeah, I don't really want to grow anything here anymore.
Yeah, we tried in the mountain property. We were on weathered granite, and we knew it would be a challenge. But I had a small raised bed, and combined with the chicken manure that we would put into it, and also a tiny little greenhouse where we grew stuff in containers, we were able to grow a little bit of food that way. But it's nothing that you would want to go out there on that property and try to till it up and farm it, like, to grow anything on the land itself.
Yeah.
So here it's a lot different. We have a lot of soil. Now, is it rich soil? It varies in different places in the valley. The potato fields are not the black, rich soil that you see in the Midwest. They're, some people have claimed they're pretty much a hydroponic crop, because all they do is irrigate them to get the plants to grow, and the soil just holds the roots in place. But we do have the ability to have long roots roots in the valley. As a matter of fact, the native grasses here have very long roots. So it's just a matter of being able to enhance the soil, add some nutrients, add a lot of compost so it can hold that soil moisture. The garden beds that I constructed here, I took from a Native American method. At least that's what I read in a book. And instead of doing a raised bed, I did a sunken bed. So I dug down about 2 to 3 feet into the ground, and then I put woody material on the bottom because there's a lot of woody shrubs out here. So I reused the ones that I had to pull up and put them on the ground. And then I layered it with soil and compost material, leaving it just a few inches below grade. And so in this way, it minimizes evaporation, retains soil moisture, plus adds a lot of nutrients into the soil so that I can grow a lot of things.
Yeah, that's a super cool method. I saw another method. I believe it was in Utah. Some people that I knew actually were involved in this movement that was bringing back this like technique. And what they did was they made like a kind of exactly what you're talking about with that garden bed, but underground, like bigger, like it would be an earthen greenhouse. And so they took, a backhoe and dug down 12 feet in the soil, kind of in a square. And then you could kind of walk into it like it had the kind of a driveway in and out, even though it was really deep. And then they built this interesting little top on it where there was ventilation. It was mostly made of, like wood, but it did cover it to a certain extent. And that was a really interesting thing. And they said that they could grow plants year round. It would keep the same temperature basically year round. I thought it was really interesting. And because you would grow them actually in the ground there. Yeah, in the bottom.
Thing I'm working on, and hopefully we'll be able to get that up and running soon, but I did dig down for a greenhouse as well. I can't go 12 feet because our water table is too shallow to go that deep, but I dug down a little bit and I'll be able to build the greenhouse over where I dug, and I'm using earth bags for that north wall for a better insulation, and hopefully it'll be a 4-season greenhouse when it's done.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Innovation, modern and ancient and innovation, all with the mayonnaise slapping the meat to the bun kind of a thing, the hamburger method. So no, those are awesome. Those are awesome. Makes me jealous because, those are things that I want to have property on so that I can actually do, instead of seeing things and helping, do them. I want to have like my own research lab called my lab or called my land, go out there and do all my research and have all my little, scientific projects going on. Amazing things. So one of the things, like I always tell people, living in the city, I when I first moved back, like say I've been on land, growing food, eating that food 100%, and then I have to come back, to the city or the land. And I'm always like really disgruntled, even if, like I go down to the co-op and I buy, local food, it's usually pretty expensive and it never really tastes as good, like as what you grow. And it's a trip to have to go to a store and buy certain kinds of foods. When you're living on the land, you get used to those types of different kinds of seasonal food and the things that you're growing and what you have available, that has come off your land. So I always tell people, like, you just can't even, for me, there's like this resentment when I have to kind of come back into the modern landscape.
It's very true. And it's something that, a lot of people don't think about, is that it's a little bit alienating and isolating to your friends and family members who are still very much in the mainstream. So if they come visit, and I've had this happen, and I often will serve food that is either local or grown on the ranch, and homemade, and it's not what people are used to. And so, you can get a little bit of this, are they being polite and eating it, or do they really like it? Because it's so different from what they're used to, but it's exactly what you're saying. We're totally used to it. And we think it's so much better than the stuff you can buy in the stores. We do still buy some things that we cannot grow here. The San Luis Valley is a pretty harsh growing area with a short growing season. The Western Slope in Colorado has a lot of ability to grow things like peaches that don't do so well here. So I did buy some organic peaches from Colorado this year to put up as jam. So, people ask me where I shop, and I basically tell them everywhere. I might get meat from a neighbor who's an organic beef rancher. I might go into town, and I'm actually the president on the board of directors for an organization called Sawatch Works. And we run, in addition to a lot of other things, a little local health food store where we try to promote local farmers and growers. And so the things that you get there are from a neighbor down the road. And we try to keep the prices low because we're a nonprofit organization. We get help with grants. Our markup is pretty low, and we try to offer a lot of incentive and discount programs for the community. So we understand that it is a challenge to eat healthy and local, and we try to bring that up and make sure that people in the community can actually get what they need, and the people who are producing it and have abundance and excess have a place to sell it. So, we're doing that as well. But yes, it's definitely something where, it's different to buy something from the store than it is to grow here. And it's so much better if I can go out to the garden and pick something and make it fresh for dinner.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I spent 6 months on a farm in Mendocino, and it was an urban farm, but we had like old historic hotels that were letting us also build on their land, and we would grow herbs for their chef or whatever else too, but we would grow a certain amount. So we had a big CSA thing there, but we would make our own chicken sausage. We'd grind up, first we'd slaughter our own chickens. Yeah. And then, then we would, the ones that got kind of mutilated that we couldn't sell, then, we would make a chicken sausage out of them, when you have to defeather them, and sometimes their structure kind of collapses. So we would make chicken sausage out of that. We grew all our own herbs to make, breakfast sausages, patties, and then we'd stack them all up and put them into the freezer. And then, everybody that was on the farm. So in the morning, somebody would be cooking breakfast. It was like the best breakfast ever,
Yeah. I mean, I can't even hardly eat chicken from a store, even the organic chicken. Just ours has so much more flavor. One thing I didn't know about chickens, raising them for meat, is that the meat gets darker if the chicken is allowed to use their muscles, because the meat is the muscle tissue. And when they're allowed to walk around and flap their wings, their meat actually gets darker. So some of our chicken meat actually approximates turkey in the darker meats, and even the breast meat, which is the white meat, is darker than what you would find at the store. And of course, we don't inject it with anything like they do for store-bought chicken. So it's juicy, but it doesn't just pour water out like, the ones injected with saline solutions. So it's also something that you sort of relearn when you're growing your own food, is how to cook. Even though you know how to cook, if I didn't really work with like home raised chicken before, I've had to refine my techniques to make sure that it's being cooked in a way that is going to still be juicy and still be tender, So these are things too that people don't really consider when they go into it. And I've heard people complain that the meat is tough, for their homegrown birds. And it's really just a matter of figuring out how to prepare it. Because I haven't had, even the older chickens we have used for meat birds have not been tough. So again, it's like having to relearn things that you thought you knew.
Yeah. Well, one of the things too that I've learned over the last, 10 years with, food education is that we would have, eaten a lot more tougher things. There was a lot of grass eating because a lot of the mammals were eating grass. Like in the Americas, on average, buffalo grasses could, exceed 25 feet. So, the animals walk through different grasses. And so they have found in older people, the bodies that they find in the teeth that, when they've taken samples of the food between the teeth, they find that there's a lot of components of grasses, so that they know that the people probably would have. And nowadays, you could go down to the juice bar and get the wheatgrass, right? Where it would have just been growing everywhere, right? Kind of a thing. And then you have to put it through that hard juicer and it would be tough to eat. The animals would have been a little bit different. But our diet, it turns out as we're evolving here, is getting softer and softer and softer. So that's why we have more periodontal disease and things of that nature, because the food is softer and our teeth in the, muscle tissue called the gums isn't working as much as it used to. And that's another thing you find is that's why people eat more too, because they don't, get their hunger, because there's this, I guess, from these books that I've read, there's this thing that happens when you chew really, really hard on food, for like a period of time that tells the brain that, I've ate and I've had enough. So these soft diets also make people eat a lot more because their brain isn't getting connected to the teeth of the, yes, I've chewed 40 million times and I'm full now. So, yeah. So you go back to your lifestyle, you're chewing more. I remember seeing videos on people who, had to lose a lot of weight and had health problems and went like on raw food diets. And that's the number one thing that they complained about. They lost all this weight, looked really great, got rid of their disease, but they said all I did was chew and chew and chew and chew and chew and chew and chew.
I remember as a kid, that was kind of the advice that parents would give you when kids would complain, that they were still hungry. And it's like, well, just you need to chew your food longer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the thing is, like, you go to nature, you go to more natural lifestyle, and there are a lot of, health benefits, but things do change radically. The lifestyle of being able to, the thing that I miss most about being on a farm, that I hunger for, is that I can just, go out in the morning and see what I have. For example, if we have pumpkins growing this time of year, or pumpkins would be really going great, and I could take one off the vine and just kind of poke holes in the top, leave the seeds in it and everything, and stick it in my solar oven while I go out and work. 2 hours later, come back and I'm scooping out this beautiful pumpkin, for lunch. Just sit and eat a whole nice pumpkin.
I keep a couple of containers just outside the door that I call my miniature kitchen garden, and I'll plant some lettuce and some spinach and some radishes and greens in there so that I can simply go out there and pick them for a salad.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that. And just the whole fact that you can go out, okay, we're getting ready for dinner. You go see what we have in the vegetables, and I'll go over and see what we've got in the meat section, and I'll meet you back here in the kitchen and we'll put it together. And that's another thing I really love, is that, you get to, go out and assess what needs to be eaten, where you waste a lot less food, like, for example, I was reading, like, on average, this was like 5 years ago, on average, people throw like 40% of their weekly garbage is meat. Whether it was cooked meat and it wasn't all the way eaten and they threw it out, or it was packaged meat that had gone bad in the refrigerator or gone bad in the freezer. I mean, that's a huge amount of, waste. Where you live in your kind of lifestyle and that doesn't happen. You eat what's available, so nothing goes bad.
Anyone can really, who wants to think about it, can start adapting their life to figuring out what needs to be used first and taking that approach with food. We did it even when we were living in the mainstream lifestyle. I might go to the store once a month and buy a whole bunch of things, and some of the things were better keepers than other things. And so you knew which things had to be used first. And at the end of the month, you're eating potatoes and broccoli. But at the beginning of the month, you're eating the asparagus and the things that might go bad sooner, And the other thing people don't think about is just eating in season. It's like, right now we're at the end of peaches, but apples are about to start getting ready. And there's a lot of apple trees around the valley. And so there's an abundance of apples that are going to be coming on. You don't really have to go to the store and buy applesauce in January if you prepare your apples in the fall.
Right. And, I just saw a really awesome recipe YouTube video for making, my own apple cider vinegar.
Oh, yeah.
It comes out to be like $1 a gallon, and you can make 5 gallons. And at the store, if you were to buy it, it's $7 for not very much.
Yeah. And you can basically, anyone can make it if they can get some apple juice or some apple peels. You can make it from the apple peels from your applesauce. But all you need to do is take a little bit of the mother, which is that sediment stuff in the bottom of your living apple cider vinegar, and use that to start your own. And it'll ferment on its own without any help. So making things like fermented foods and apple cider vinegar, brewing your own beer, those are things that we definitely like to do here as well.
Yeah, no, and one of the things in herb school this summer, I've learned a huge amount of applications for vinegar, especially like apple cider vinegar. But you can use a vinegar in order to make like tincture type things. You can use a vinegar. You can use kind of basically a wine as a base. You could or use, like I've been using, potato vodka for a lot of my tincture bases. But vinegar, you can do like black walnut peels in the vinegar and make like an amazing like anti-foot fungus treatment, that'll kill any kind of fungus. Yeah, and it'll last pretty much forever because it's in the vinegar. You can also, for example, this summer I learned to make mullein bug spray, and you just basically cut up the mullein and as much as you have as vinegar, and then you let it sit, for 4 weeks, and then you can, filter out and mash out the plant material, and then that is a permanent bug spray that will last indefinitely. So all you have to do is pour some like in a bottle and then, be able to spray it. So this year, if you make it, then you'll have it for next year. But yeah, there's just like so many unbelievable, you could make, vinegar tinctures because they would be better for animals and children, like if you want to give medicine to them versus, putting it in the heavy grain, alcohol. But it's amazing like what can be done with like things like apple cider vinegar. You can wash things, you can sterilize things. So across the board, just
and so beneficial for the chickens and the quail. You put it a little bit in their water and it helps keep them healthy.
Yeah. No, it's like amazing. It's like shocking and unbelievable. So this year I'm super excited because there's a couple trees here in the urban setting that I've been watching, and I've been watching that they weren't sprayed this year, and also I've been watching that the people inside don't really care what happens to their apples. So I'm like just waiting a few more days, and then I'm gonna like go out and start, in the morning when nobody's around, throwing a few in a bag, and then coming back and chopping them up and starting to get them, into a vinegar mixture to start sitting. But yeah,
Yeah,
I'm super, super excited about it. I'm just super excited. I was like, wow, I'm going to do that. This is what I'm going to do this this winter is I'm going to
that's
make
great.
vinegar.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, I just love that I can actually, do research. I'm just preparing, like you were talking about. I'm just in preparation for, when I get on land, and all the different things and ideas that I have. And, it may take me for the rest of my life, but I just can't wait to actually have, like a research. That's what I'm going to call it, is my laboratory of all the different things, that I have going. But I'm super excited about it. Okay,
That's
so
great.
yeah. So, what's your favorite time of year there on the homestead?
You know, I always used to be a fall person, but now I really look forward to spring. It's like I go out and look for the first signs of life, after having a cold winter. Um, we're really more in tune to the seasons when we live a lifestyle like this. And, you know, Groundhog Day is sort of a marker for us because it's that midway point between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And that is from folklore the day that you're actually supposed to be able to go and see some of the first signs of life. And I truly do. I'll look around, and in town where it's a little bit warmer, you'll see the first green up of a little bit of grass or little flowers trying to poke through in people's lawns, or you'll see the buds on the trees starting to swell and get bigger. And that's very exciting to me. It means things have made it through the winter and they're going to wake up. They're not awake yet, it's not green yet, but it's just applying that hope, and that whole brand new life and the whole cycle is beginning again is very exciting for me.
Yeah, and it's very grounding because you have to like plan your life out for 4 seasons, and in the season that you're in, you're getting ready for the next season as well, so you're kind of juggling both in preparation. Yeah, no, it's a good lifestyle. And emotionally, I mean, I feel that, mentally, emotionally, physically, I mean, you get stronger in these kind of lifestyles physically. Your health gets a lot better. Your needs get less, right? So that you don't have all these needs and this drive and this ambition. It's more of like a daily, process that you're in that's going to continue without end. And emotionally, how do you find yourself on all those kinds of different levels, living on the land and doing what you're doing, and compared to maybe people you see out in the mainstream that are still kind of doing what they're doing, and they just seem like they're, like a rat on a wheel kind of a deal.
Well, we get tired from all the physical work, but it's a good tired. It's not like emotionally run down kind of tired like you get from stresses in the city and at work. The physical labor is beneficial, it's healthy, and the winter time does offer a slight period of rest. The days are a lot shorter, the nights are a lot longer. We find ourselves wandering back to the bed, once it starts to get dark. And in the winter, that occurs a lot earlier. And it's a place where we can rest and stay warm. And things are moving a little bit slower. There's no planting to do, there's no harvesting to do, but there's a lot of planning and things that go into, staying warm, like chopping wood and thawing water and things like that. So there's still a lot of work to be done, but it seems like you just naturally progress to a longer working day in the summer months because there's more light and there's more things that you have to get done. And you're always planning for the next season. Right now it's harvest time, and harvest time means I'm canning a lot of things. I'm harvesting a lot of vegetables from the garden. We'll be doing our meat harvest probably next month. So there's a lot of things happening. But then in the winter, it kind of slows down. It's like, okay, I've got fewer animals because we've harvested the meat, but I do need to take care of those animals. So there's always things to do, but it's different because it's cyclic with the seasons, whereas in the city, it seems like it was constant. It's like you had to work between these hours every day, and the clock never changed, even though the light changed. And I hear so much from people who hate going to work and coming home in the dark in December and January. And it's because companies and corporations and workplaces don't shift the clock. You still have to go to work for the same number of hours. But on the farm, you do make that shift. And so where in the summertime I might be getting outside to do chores at 5:30, now I'm not going out until 6:30 because the light is different. So, and the chickens are still going to be asleep because it's dark. So I don't have to get out there at 5:30.
Well,
so
it's always the chickens, isn't it? It's like we would bargain on farms like, okay, tonight's your night in the summertime, because you'd have to go out there at 9 o'clock because you always got these 2-3 chickens that are like, party all night. And so you have to wait until it gets, the very minute it gets dark, they run in there, and then you can shut the door to keep them from getting eaten at night. But yeah, it's always the chickens. You got a couple that are late night party girls.
They return to roost at sunset, but some of them like to linger. What I found was just taking a little solar light, a little LED light that recharges in the sun, and then hanging it in the coop. When the sun starts going down, they're drawn to that light and they'll go in. You don't have to leave it in there, but it's a really good tool for getting them to go in a little bit earlier.
Wow, I like that idea, because you always get mad at them. You're like, would you just go in there? Go to bed. Get the heck
Clean up with solar light will definitely help.
Yeah. No, so one of my favorite things on the farm was when you start to get babies, and the babies all run around. On one farm I was on, we had a lot of food. We had lamb that we slaughtered. I did several processes of meat birds, right? Man birds, and I had like a little house for them. They went outside in the sun. My guys were super happy. They were happy. They were happy chickens. And then we had on that farm we had turkeys and all kinds of stuff. And we had Muskogee ducks that we did too. I forget. We might have had something else as well. But a lot of the times when I'm on farms, the hatching is like my favorite. When they all start hatching little babies, and you're finally at that process, because sometimes early on you have to fake it till you make it, which means you have to buy some of the birds to practice on that are older, and some of them need to be saved from commercial farms. That gives you a little practice time, and then you may buy little chicklets
and we bought from hatcheries and things, but we have our own incubator now.
Hold on 1 second. I'm being we've just gone to commercial, so we'll just mute out. I'll see you back at 1 after. It's Dawn Anderson, and we'll continue our conversation on Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. We're going to take a 5-minute break. See you back. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Radio at freedomslips.com.
And so I'm in the process of calling her back now. Anyway, you're listening to the second hour. We're in the. Are you there?
Yes, are you there?
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, we're in the second hour. I'm having all kinds of weird technical problems today, which is all right. We'll get through it. But we're in the second hour for the Wednesday edition of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And we're Wednesday edition is, I'm just checking to make sure that everything's connected up. So we're listening to the Wednesday edition of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And we're in Studio A on Wednesday from noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Saturday, my show is 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are 100% listener supported. So please go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Everything that everyone does on this network, we all volunteer our time. And we do it for free so that our hosts can bring interesting information to everybody. And that's what we do here at Revolution Radio. So help us to stay funded. And we have all kinds of heirloom seeds. We have advertising on the main website. We have also, you can just go ahead and throw us a couple bucks. We'd love that too. So anyway, we're back with Dawn Anderson, and she's going to talk about her incubator that she uses. So go ahead and talk to us about your incubator.
Yeah, so originally we used to get chicks from the farm store when we lived on the mountain, and we've gotten some from the hatchery, but we wanted to try hatching our own and raising our own birds. So we invested in an incubator. Actually, we have 2 incubators now, and they're not very expensive. One can hold 2 dozen chicken eggs. The other can hold 1 dozen chicken eggs. So they're not very large. They don't take a whole lot of energy. And it's really pretty fun. Actually, right now, today, I've got quail eggs in one of the incubators, and they are hatching. So I have 3 quail chicks that have already hatched and are waiting to be dry enough to transfer to the brooder. So it's been a really fun experience being able to have our animals reproduce and not have to rely on hatcheries and other people for, producing our own livestock. We also have a breeding pair of rabbits, and so we've been able to successfully breed rabbits here. And we have used the incubators even to hatch quail eggs, chicken eggs, and even goose eggs, because we have a bunch of geese. We can't use the automatic turners for the goose eggs because they're too large, so I have to turn them every day.
Yeah, and that's something people don't know that, a brooder would do. She likes to. She spins her eggs. She actually uses them, and she turns them and tucks them back in. She rolls one out while she's sitting on them. She gives it a little turn, and then she shoves it back in.
Right.
That would be her job. And, brooders are interesting chickens because you don't always get brooders either.
Right. Not chickens are interested in being moms. So
yeah.
This incubator helps. Now, if I have a broody hen, and this hasn't happened yet, but if I get one, I would let her sit on a clutch of eggs and see if she can hatch them.
Yeah, so that's how, when you get your, brooding chickens or even your brooding turkey or, they become like, you take really good care of them because they're hard to find. And, chickens and animals that, like geese and these animals that, sit on their nests, they work really, really hard. In a lot of cases, they won't eat. They don't drink water. They don't do anything. Their whole life is about, getting these eggs and taking care of them. And the brooders are not too picky about where the egg comes from. As long as they have eggs, they're happy. If they don't have eggs, then they're pretty unhappy, and they're very difficult to deal with sometimes. They get broody.
Where people have had broody hens and the eggs have not hatched. And so they have gone to the feed store and gotten a few baby chicks and put them under her. And they're very happy then, because then they have chicks to take care of.
Yeah, all the work was worth it.
Right.
Versus all the work wasn't worth it. No, we had some problems with turkeys. I mean, periodically, what I saw on some of the farms, especially farms that were just getting started, or like we would buy meat birds, and order 100 meat birds, and they come in actually a package as soon as they hatch, and they ship them like overnight, and then you have to go to the post office, pick them up. But some of them are crushed in there, some could be injured, some could be dead. It's just so much better to like raise them on your land so that there's no damage that happens to them in the process. And sometimes they're a little bit genetically modified. Sometimes it takes a while for you having them and them breeding in order for them to figure out or get it right. Like we had turkeys that the man turkey was really good. Mr. T, he was good. He knew what to do. He knew how to make it happen. But we had 7 really kind of, effed up female turkeys. And one was like a full out lesbian. She hated Mr. T. I mean, hated him like with a vengeance. And she constantly tried to escape. One time she flew and she was living in the neighbor's, big pine tree. And it took us like 2 weeks to recapture her. But yeah, they would lay eggs in their individual nests. We had like 3 or 4 nests for them. And then they would get confused, and then all of them would lay on top of each other on like one egg in one of the nests. And it was just really, they were just really confused about what happened because they weren't brooded. They were hatched, put in a package, and sent. And so you have to have that nurturing. It goes along with, nature. And if they don't have it, then they don't know how to do it. It's actually kind of an interesting thing that kind of has to be taught or retrained sometimes.
Yeah, I've heard that about turkeys in particular, that it's kind of been bred out of them to really know how to hatch their own eggs sometimes.
Yeah, they get really confused about the whole situation. It's kind of like shocking how something so right could go so wrong. You're like, wow. I mean, nature is supposed to be able to do this. So, people that are homesteading, it's a really good thing because they're actually, learning how to actually work with nature, on your land, and, to be able to give the animals exactly what they need in order for them to keep, reproducing, their family lines on your land so that, you have a clean genetics and you have genetics of animals who are happy and well cared for and loved as well.
Right. That's important.
Yeah, it's super important. I don't know how people can, put 200 chickens in a building that never have good air quality, never have real light, live in a 12-inch by 12-inch cage, and shoot out an egg every day and given some grain by a machine. And then, they can't even touch each other. I just don't even know. I just sometimes, some of our food systems are beyond belief.
That's true. And, another reason for my husband and I wanting to do this is just to have this connection with our food and to know that we're eating an egg or we're eating chicken meat, that bird has a good life. And it does get to go outside. It gets to take dust baths. It gets to eat lots of bugs in the summertime. I mean, all of these things that commercial chickens don't get to experience.
Yeah. So what do you think? Okay, so, one of the big topics I've had with a lot of other people lately, actually, when I'm on other people's shows, is about the food supply. And, I really personally, there is information that is starting to come out about food shortages, that are going to be happening. But the other thing that I've been watching, the environment is watching the fragility of it. And that there aren't a lot of people anymore that grow food, or even in their yards, or even here in Reno, we're unlike your area, but we're an official food desert. I mean, we are a desert, and most of the people who come for farmers markets, even in the Reno area, are from California. So we don't really have, any industry here. I mean, we do, people here still do like meat cows. There's a big alfalfa growing, and there are some commercial dairy. But, they use the pesticides because Nevada was the only state that raw milk was banned in by the FDA. So,
wow.
yeah, so we have like a major food desert. So the deal is that if anything happened, people here would not have access to any kind of food, and very limited foraging as well because of the type of ecosystems that are already in place with the desert. So what are your thoughts? I mean, you probably, where you're from, there's quite a bit of abundance, but I heard that you also dealing with the co-op and selling whatever's extra for farmers. I mean, what do you see, being a person who creates their own food, and do you see anything with the, food markets? Because this is the deal. A lot of people think, carrots come out of the back room at the grocery store where, like depending on the climate, it could take you 4 months to grow that carrot. One carrot.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on some of that?
Well, I think the food system is a lot more fragile than people think it is. Our country, we rely on food not only from our country, but from other countries. So much food gets transported. We've just become so accustomed to getting anything we want, whether it's in season or not. And so, people just get used to going to the store and buying whatever they feel like they want to have for dinner that week, One thing that people should pay attention to is when you have storm events and things like that, and everybody rushes to the grocery store, just how quickly the shelves get emptied and how long it takes for them to be restocked, especially if there's a blizzard or something that prohibits the truck from coming. Even our little health food grocery store, where we get a lot of things from local vendors, we still rely on a couple of trucks to come every week and restock. So that it hinges a lot on the transportation industry as well as the farming industry. I think one of the ways that a lot of people survived the Great Depression back in the 1930s was because they were accustomed to having their own gardens and, a few chickens in the backyard. And these types of food sources became very important for survival back then. And I think, anyone who has an interest in gardening should definitely do it. Even if they're in an apartment or a condo, you can still grow a few things in containers, even if it's just a pot of basil on your windowsill. It's something, I'm definitely an advocate for having people grow some of their own food to the extent that they're able. I think down here you probably see more backyard gardens, but there's still a lot of people even in this area that don't keep a backyard garden. Growing up, it was essential to my childhood for having fresh produce. We didn't grow everything, but we always had green beans and maybe some leaf lettuce and fresh tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers coming out of the garden. People just don't really realize what that's like anymore. I think our food system is definitely fragile, and I think that more people should be growing food.
Yeah. Well, back in those days, during World War II, the government asked people to grow victory gardens because there wasn't enough food to go around. And they didn't really want, people to starve. And then that's when the co-ops really started taking hold too, especially into the Great Depression. So that because people couldn't go out and buy stuff in bulk. And back then you pretty much bought large bulks of stuff because people still made bread, people still made a lot of pastries and homemade pies. So the co-op was a place where people could get like just a pound of flour or half a pound of sugar.
Right. Everybody likes to show the picture of the empty bread shelves during a hurricane or a snowstorm or some other major event, but they don't show the baking aisle where they probably still have bags and bags of flour on the shelf.
Well, that's, yeah, no. So I, after I started seeing a lot of this stuff coming out in February about all this flooding in the Midwest where they grow a lot of, the GMO crops, but also you have to realize like a lot of the non-GMO wheat is grown in places like Montana where they had massive fires last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, literally whole areas, were not going to be, lost their crops because those would have been at the end of the year when they would have been harvesting them, lost all the crops all across, the South and the Midwest. A lot of those farms are still decimated. Some of the farmers don't ever think that they'll ever return to them and grow anything because all of the, topsoil is gone. It's been washed off, or some of it's still underwater. But it was interesting because I went out looking for some non-GMO, whole wheat grain. And literally spent, quite a bit of money bulking up on it because it's going to last quite a long time. But, I was concerned coming into this winter and not being able to get a good flour. And so also one of the things I started doing last summer was I started teaching myself how to make bread as part of, homesteading, right? So I'm practicing to homestead full time. So now it's like if anything happens. Huh?
People get so used to just grabbing a loaf of bread off the shelf. And, there's a lot of things you can do. You don't even have to bake yeast bread if you don't want to. Cornbread is a quick bread, and it's very easy to make. You can make that. Biscuits don't require, the same kinds of things as bread. And I've done all of these: biscuits, cornbread, yeast breads. But it's something simple that you can make just probably from ingredients in your pantry. And so what if you don't have a loaf of bread right then? If you have the ingredients to even make a pan of biscuits, you've got bread.
Well, and now, now I start to realize, after going through this whole process of making bread and, looking at different flours and, and all these different kinds of ideas. And, now I realize why, bread or cornbread or some type of bread is a staple in every country because it's how they could grow the crops, they could share the crops, they could grind, have little local grinders where they can go and grind the grain. They could give part of their grain away to the grinder, for payment. So there's like no money out of pocket. So this is how people would have survived, disasters, economic collapse. It's just worldwide, I think, use this loosely, but the American mindset is taking over worldwide for all kinds of different reasons. And people are getting away from the actual relationship and responsibility, personal responsibility for caretaking land, for you eating, off the land. One of the things too, that really got me this year. So my teacher that I'm taking, the whole summer program was kind of more like wildcrafting herbal medicine. And we would go out and do these walks and these campouts up into different areas, ecological areas, and look at the different kinds of plants that there are, right? And where plants would have come from and, if they're edible, are they medicinal, are they poisonous, what kind of relationships to these plants. Well, a lot of these medicine plants these days are a little bit tough on the liver, but that's because everybody's on pharmaceutical drugs. If you weren't on pharmaceutical drugs, you could take a lot more plant medicines that are out there, right? Because your body would have been okay. But so many people are taking so many different kinds of pharmaceutical medicines that it's actually damaged their liver and they don't even know it. And so
I believe that.
Yeah, so
I do not take pharmaceutical drugs, so I think in a lot of ways I'm sort of the outlier because so many people that I know are on a prescription for something, whether it's blood pressure, cholesterol, whatever it is, and I don't go and buy into a lot of that. I do monitor my health, but I'm not one to run to the doctor and get a pill for something,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, but when you have a relationship to the soil and the water and the land, that is your medicine, right? So you just don't get sick.
Yes, that's how we like to think of it, you know? It's like food is medicine, and if we eat a healthy diet and we can get the nutrients we need from the food that we eat.
Yeah, and I think love, or the vibration of love and caretaking of that, I think actually really is an important nutrient that people don't really get or understand.
I
It's a
agree.
really important thing. I mean, I remember even when I was doing a lot of my meat birds, and we'd have a small team, to slaughter them, and we'd have to bring them to this little slaughter area. And I just really tried to keep them as calm as possible. And we might do like 100, because we raised them for 8 weeks or whatever, 6 weeks. But I always made sure.
We don't nearly that many because we're just basically doing it for us. But when, slaughter day is always a sort of somber day, and we always have a little ceremony first, and we pet the birds and we thank them for everything that they do for us, because they are very beneficial in a lot of ways, and we especially thank them for giving their life to sustain ours. And I think it's really important, and it's one of those connections people have lost. This is the ultimate sacrifice that this animal is making for you. And in return, we have given it clean water, good food, love, the ability to feel the sun, the ability to have dust baths, the ability to live and enjoy life. And it's very sombering to think that now this animal is going to die for us.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but the thing is, like, it's that love that matters. And that's how I would be with all my birds at the end, because I took really good care of them. And at the end, a lot of the people that would come, new people and apprenticeships, they just want to get it over with because it's something that they're having a really hard time dealing with. And so, like, I just would make sure and hold each bird, take care of it, keep it as calm as possible, thank it, do all these different things. And it just really changed my relationship. Now, like if I go into places and stores, I mean, the first thing I ever think about when I see meat is, where did it come from? Like what happened to it? Those are like concerns of mine. Which should be concerns of, everybody. Do you want to eat something that's been, completely and totally abused, that has huge amounts of fear in its body, cortisol production, which is like battery acid hormone, that's just really, really bad news, because when you eat that animal, your body is going to sense and pick up that information too. And then your body is going to go into peak stress.
And we just don't purchase that type of product anymore, for those reasons, and because we're able to grow our own in the ways and methods that we are a lot more comfortable with, And then we also have friends and neighbors who raise other types of animals for meat that we get from them, because we know that this animal has been loved and it's been taken care of, and that it's not going to be processed with that fear like you're talking about. It's definitely an eye-opener, and you have to come to terms with what you're comfortable with, what you're not. Some folks just decide to become vegetarians, and I'm really fine with that. I mean, we considered that as an option as well, but because of the location we chose, it makes more sense for us, in our minds anyway, to raise some meat for protein.
Well, yeah, and I love that you said, where our location is at, kind of actually help to make the choice. And I think that you need different types of manure as well. You need the animals to go and break up the dirt and poop in it and clean the bugs out of it. And these are, because the water is going to hold more, the better broken up the dirt is. You're going to have less insects on your property that are negative, or if you have too many, and so, the animals do a lot of positive work. I have a friend of mine, she calls like native seeds and native plants her employees, and so that's basically what your animals are. They're your employees. They're going out, they're doing their job that they love to do, that benefits every single part of your life, their life, and the property's life.
It's true. And the animal livestock keeping is definitely a big part of our soil building process. Our friends who are organic beef farmers, raise and manage their cattle in ways that improve the soil instead of being detrimental to the soil. And these kinds of things are very much a part of our lives. And we think of this, as being a holistic process that is beneficial, not just to us, but to other forms of life too. Since we've been doing this, we've been building habitat, and we see all kinds of diversity in insects and pollinators that come to our garden. We see a lot of diversity in other animals and livestock that benefit from the things that we are doing. So that makes me feel good that maybe we're making a little bit of a difference in improving life for other animals on the planet too.
Yeah, well, I mean, farming, homesteading, pioneering, whatever you want to call it, is like the gift that keeps on giving. Just constant. It's like a rapid outflow too, because things are instantaneous. So I think there are a lot of people in Colorado that are in the holistic management movement, which I really dig a lot of those concepts where it's managed grazing with different kinds of animals. And that whole concept started out of Africa with his study of elephants and using elephants to drought-ridden areas, to use them to, break up the ground and poop in it and everything else to start restoring the water to be held into the ground because the ground has been worked up. Mm-hmm. So you use the animals to do their job, and they love to do their job.
It's true, they do.
And they love you, and they love that you love to do their job. They're always real happy to see you. Yeah, I am
running when you go out there.
Yeah,
they come running.
Yeah, they're like, "Oh, you're coming out! All right, great." The whole
super treats because of course, when I do cooking and canning, they get the produce scraps that are good for them. We do have a compost pile for things they can't have, but anything they can have, we give back to them. So they're definitely happy to receive those types of things grown in the garden that are good for them too.
Yeah, and they'll eat anything. I've even seen them, a pack of chickens jump on the back of a dove and tear it apart and eat it because they are raptors.
They're omnivores. Yeah, they're not strictly vegetarians, and I've seen them hunt mice and eat grubs and bugs and other things that are in the animal kingdom.
Yeah, no, the best cleanup, animals that you can have are ducks and chickens. Yes. They will clean up and eat anything that is, evasive. They will take it out immediately. So funny. Chickens are funny. And the other thing too is people need to know that haven't done any of this kind of stuff is that when you get animals, even if you get them in a little box or you hatch them, you're going to notice they all have different personalities. Just because they're a chicken doesn't mean that they all have the same personality. You'll have ones that are introverted. You'll have the extroverted ones. You'll have the ones that like humans, the ones that don't like humans, the ones that like animals. For example,
the ones that are protective, we've got one to attack, and that's okay. And then we have others that are nice and calm. We had a hen one time who would come up to us and hunch up her shoulders and let us pet her, and she would make a purring sound every time we did that. So they all have their different personalities and their different social structures that they bring with them.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, so what like if you wanted to you were talking about something you were talking about was that, and I didn't really understand what you were talking about, but you have committed to helping your neighbors through the winter. Just because, we also talk about community on this show and helping each other.
Well, I'm involved in a lot of different community things, one of which is an organization called Swatch Works, where we have a little health food store, a fitness studio, a thrift shop, among some other things in town. And, these kinds of things definitely help the community because it provides local food for folks to purchase. Their thrift store, people can recycle things by donating. If there's something that they need, they can buy it. So it's just sort of a good place to have different things that some of these small communities are lacking. We're also a food desert. We're also sort of a chain store and goods desert, which is not a bad thing. We don't have a lot of these type of conveniences. And so a lot of community members do have to sort of come together and help each other out. There's a lot of people who rely on other folks in the community to help out when they need a helping hand. I'm going to be helping out my beef rancher neighbors. They run an internship program, which has been very successful, but they're going into the slow period, and their interns are both leaving to go work on other ranches. And so I'm going to be helping them a little bit in the winter to help them run their ranch and their business, just some sort of behind the scene things that, you use with the computer and things like that, but necessary things for their business. So, people have different skill sets, and I think there's a lot of skill sharing that happens in a place like this.
Yeah, so it's good to know. So, everybody, you're just bartering and trading. You just don't know it yet because there might be something in the future that you need, and your neighbors go, oh my God, we can totally help you with that.
And we do that too. Neighbors will look after a place if you have to be gone for the day, or, open up the animals or close them up at night for you, or, feed the dog, whatever. But you have to have that kind of connection, I think. If you need to have someone help you out, you can barter services like that pretty easily.
Yeah, so there are a lot of benefits to sustainable living, homestead living, farming, and a huge amount of benefits if you do it in a good way also for the environment that's around you. I like to think of farming in two ways, you remember Pigpen on, the Charlie Brown?
Yeah.
And that's, in a good way, say that Pigpen's your farm, but all of the positive carbon and microbes and everything that you're building that are essential to soil building and cleaning the water and cleaning the air and cleaning the environment, that stuff goes off, off gases onto other areas. And as you build yours out and it becomes more microbial rich and carbon rich, then it goes out more and more and more and helps other areas, and also helps to knock down negative carbons as well. So I always think that's important, very important.
When you build soil in a positive way for growing things or keeping livestock, you have the ability to sequester carbon. And, in a society where we release a lot more carbon than we sequester, I think every little bit helps.
Yes, I think in the future it's going to be that every little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Russia, and I think a lot about what Russia has done, at least with their food supply. Because in the 90s, they were involved with a lot of these. They were, forced into international NAFTA type agreements where it was free trade, where, you grew these crops or you accepted this crappy food that was grown in free trade into your country for exchange of whatever else, right? And
Right.
so Russia had gotten stuck in that with everybody else taking, really toxic food, GMOs, hybrids, whatever else. And I think one of the most contaminated products they were getting were chickens, slaughtered chickens that they didn't really like. But see, their people started to adapt to it because they could buy the stuff. Well, then they had the currency collapse in the 90s. I have a lot of Russian friends who fled, like people that were physicists and all kinds of stuff, because they knew that they weren't going to be able to get out of the country once it really came down. And they talked about how there were food lines because people were used to buying stuff now. They weren't really used to, in a lot of the major areas, growing any of it since they were getting, these free trade, even though the food wasn't as good. They just kind of adapted to those lifestyles. And then after the currency collapse, there would be like 2,000 people in line at these stores staying overnight and trying to get in these stores. And most cases, there wasn't really anything left. And a loaf of bread could be a wheelbarrow of money.
Right.
And after that happened and they started to rebuild, especially really under Putin and some of his people. One thing I can say about Russia is what they've done with their food systems is unbelievable. I mean, like the turnaround and how it is now. And I think they grow something like 87% of all the food that people need in Russia is grown in their own country. And they encourage people, even if you have like a little backyard garden and you have a cucumber plant, to raise it organically and jar it. And you can, basically sell it on the open markets. And so, they banned GMOs across the board. In 2014, now they grow like the largest amount of ancient organic wheat in the world.
Wow.
And Putin, and they're moving towards being the largest organic, in a sustainable way for the environment and the people, largest organic food producers in the world. That's where they're headed towards. Why all these other countries haven't really made the turn at all. We're still purchasing a lot of this free trade food, which isn't free trade because the people who have to produce it are enslaved. And
could be, turned around if we would write, some sensible things into our farm bill. But our farm bill seems to want to support a lot of the GMO crops, the soybeans, the corn, which then get fed to the livestock. So it's supporting the, major meat industries that do these inhumane practices. And, if we actually would help the organic farms and the people who are growing food that you eat instead of grain that you feed to another animal, we might find that we too could generate a lot of our own food supply.
Well, that's the thing, is people are always telling you, well, like, they give out $9 billion of subsidies to farmers annually. How come you don't have any to, do the work that you want to do? And I said, because they won't pay me. They won't help me to do what I want to do.
Right. Those subsidies aren't for people like you and me. They're for, the large scale industrial farms.
Right. And then sometimes they get people to sign contracts to get a subsidy every month for, say, the next 6 years not to grow anything on their land.
That's happened before, too.
So people like us, we have to do it by the, hair of our chinny chin chin. And
we find funding mechanisms, and I think that's an important thing to talk about, too.
Yeah.
It's, funding mechanisms if you're going to go into this sustainable homesteading kind of lifestyle, because even though under the Cottage Food Act here, I'm able to sell a few eggs, I don't produce enough eggs that would, cover all of our financial needs. It'll cover a little bit of the feed that I give to the chickens to supplement, but it's not going to pay the, the taxes on the property. So, it's something that everyone should consider, is what's going to be their financial model. Maybe they get an inheritance, and I've seen people do that. I've seen people who have had a trust fund set up for them and can draw from that. In our model, we saved some money when we were both in the workforce. My husband still working to bring in some money. There's a lot of, employment opportunities, not just for bartering, but jobs that actually pay a little bit of money. They're not going to pay a lot in an area like this, but it could be enough that somebody could make it work if they decided to do it. There's other business opportunities. Some of the sustainable farms have incorporated legal marijuana into their farm plan because they can actually use it for generating a little bit of an income to sustain their other projects. So there's a lot of creative ideas out there for how to fund your farm, because you're not going to typically find a whole lot of help from, the farm bill. But there are ways to do it. If you really have a will, there's a way.
Well, it'd be really great if, say, for example, CSA comes out of biodynamics, right? That's part of our deal, the CSA boxes. And that's where, you have a farm and you're going to grow food. Usually that's around 17 weeks, I think, during the summer. And it's usually farmer choice of what you get in the box. Because, sometimes you don't know what's going to be ready. So you can't really project out that you're going to get this, and this in your box. And we got creative. We did CSA. We did kimchi boxes that people could take home. We grew things that, try to do all kinds of creative things to get people to buy more CSA. But it's where the people actually pay you in advance for the 17 weeks. So it gives you the money you need in order to do all the labor, get the seeds, produce everything that you need to produce for them. So that's kind of like how people do it. But it would be so nice if we could have people come together in different parts of the state, and people that, like say all of Northern Nevada, and have people who have excess income or trusts or things that they would like to give in a philanthropy way without so much paperwork and all this crazy stuff. One of the things that when you farm, you don't want to do paperwork anymore. You're like, I don't want to apply for grants. I don't have time to do it, number one. And number two, I just want to be on my land. I need to be paying attention to what's on my land.
Right.
And that's kind of like, where you're at. But have maybe teams of people come together that, as a group, help to give money to certain people, and, pick people maybe who have been doing it a while, who have an education, not a lot of fly-by-night people who just get involved with it because they're going to make money and then decide that this is really not what they want. Because it's not a lifestyle for everybody. There are days where it's grueling and it's tough. There's
days where you may be feeling under the weather and you just don't want to go out there, but you have to, and it's like, you can't pick and choose. You don't get a vacation. You don't get a holiday. It's like when you commit to this kind of lifestyle, there's things that you have to do every single day because there's other animals and plants that are depending on you. So you have to get out there and do it.
Yeah, so you have to love it. It's a love thing.
Yeah, and you don't think of it so much as a chore, as a, hey, I get to go out and, do these things, and other people don't get to do these things,
Yeah, and it'd be so nice if, like, in philanthropy, so I think about this kind of stuff a lot, but, like, if people could get together in different areas and pull their, monies together and then offer help to the community, like getting a co-op in several locations, getting the co-op connected to these farms, having somebody that can market and PR, maybe pay them for a job to do all the marketing and PR for the farms connected to the co-op, and put out the emailers, and,
with Swatch Works, there's an organization that started for the whole San Luis Valley, which is the Valley Food Hub. I think there's another that might have branched off of the main group. I forget the name of it right now, but they definitely are the ones that outreach to the different farms and partner with them, and they're sort of a central source for getting these boxes of food together to go to local retailers, like our food store, and we can put in orders for in-season locally grown organic produce and be able to provide it to the community because somebody thought to connect all of these sources.
It's rare. That's so rare. But if you had philanthropists that just got involved, and helped create a few jobs to help everybody and help it all kind of link together so that, they have a market. And the other thing too is that farmers could really use help that philanthropists have, like legal help, to make sure that a lot of big industry doesn't jump on the back of the small farmers, because that's kind of like what seems to happen sometimes. And to be able to kind of protect them so that the small organic farmer people can actually do their jobs, and be able to even maybe want to produce a little bit more stuff for the market, because in a lot of cases you don't, because of all the hassles you have to have and jump through, and that costs you a lot more money that you don't have because you're kind of living on a system.
And I think we're really lucky down here too, because we do have something called Rural Philanthropy Days in Colorado, and there's different regions. Colorado's divided up into several regions. The San Luis Valley is one region, and the Rural Philanthropy Days come about once every 4 years to our region, and it's actually happening here next week. So I'm going to be attending on behalf of Saguache Works, but a lot of private foundation grant funders come to these to try to connect with nonprofit organizations in rural areas that are doing a lot of good work for the community, including things that benefit health, and that's where healthy food comes in, and hopefully we'll be able to convince some of these funders that they want to support us.
Well, that's great. That's so great. But all the people that I ever talked to in Colorado who are, doing amazing things, the reason why they're in Colorado, because it's an amazing place, and all the efforts that are being made by so many different people to really create like an amazing state and amazing, diversity across the board that works for the people.
Yeah. If anyone is listening who wants to start something like that, the Rural Philanthropy Days do have a webpage, and I think that would be a place to start if your state or area doesn't have something like that. Maybe it's something that they could get going in that area and use Colorado as a model.
I'm going to definitely email them and I'm going to have a conversation with them. But, one of my friends said, and I think this is totally accurate, in the United States, they say the Colorado is the heart, like if the United States is a body, that it's where the heart is. And I think that it is. A lot of people who live in Colorado seem to have a pretty good lifestyle, and you can make choices in the lifestyle that you kind of want to have. And they even started, really protecting herbal medicine and alternative medicine and things like that more so than any other state. I think there's like several nonprofit legal type firms that actually just specifically help protect alternative medicine in the state. So, they're way far along than all the rest of the states.
That's another reason that, drew us to Colorado is some of these, benefits from living here, as far as them being more open to some of the alternative lifestyles. We were the first in the nation to legalize marijuana, which of course has challenges in addition to benefits, but I think in reality, that's the direction the nation should go, just because it is a medicinal plant that can be used for a lot of good. It can also be abused, but I think that, with proper management, it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, well, and hemp can do amazing things to restoring like really bad areas,
Hemp's just the new thing here in the valley. There's a lot of people who are converting some of their fields to hemp. Water has been an issue in this valley for a long time because the upper aquifer is overused with all the potato farms. We grow a lot of potatoes and hay down here, and actually the farmers down here voluntarily agreed to reduce their water consumption and actually charge themselves money if they don't do it. So there's a lot of issues surrounding the water, and I think hemp might be something that maybe uses less water. It might be appealing for that, or it might bring in more money. But either way, there's definitely been a movement to plant more hemp in this valley.
Well, yeah, and when big crops in America were grown by the colonizers. A lot of them were hemp because they used it for rope, for the masts of the ships. I think the first car they made like a hemp plastic product for like parts of the inside of the car, when the first diesel engine came out that ran on peanut oil. I think a lot of the parts were made by hemp. So, I mean, we have a history in making paper and all kinds of stuff in hemp. And if we could grow more hemp products, and we can get more people to break it down and put it into a usable source for making goods, we could definitely get away from plastic, which never biodegrades. All this hemp stuff would biodegrade. You could just throw it into your compost and keep turning it until it's gone. Oh, my steering wheel was made of hemp and I had to replace it. Just throw that sucker in the, compost for about 50 years and have it break down. Versus, all this plastic. I mean, one plastic black bag, they say it takes 500 years to decompose.
Yeah, it's
not biodegrade. Decompose.
Yeah, it's choking our oceans and doing all kinds of bad things out there. So hopefully we can reduce especially our single-use plastics, and maybe hemp will help with that.
Yeah. I went to this in Nevada, I'm just kind of always blown away by how these native people have lived in the desert, Paiutes mostly, their history of all that. And I remember I went to this open house that they had where there were a lot of Paiute people there, a lot of the grandmothers, and people brought the great grandmothers and some of their historical items that they have from their families. But they grew grasses, and they wove grasses into everything, like necklaces, beautiful necklace medallions, skirts, clothing, hats, fishing nets, duck decoys, baskets that didn't leak water. They'd use pine sap to seal them. Sometimes they use, pine needles to weave the baskets, which are going to be waterproof. Right. And, it was unbelievable to me. Like, they made everything out of something that grew, that they could cultivate in their environment. And they didn't need anything. And here they are in like a desert that, it would be very difficult for the average person, to actually live in and actually survive with what you just have around your vicinity.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot we can take away from that. And even just in our modern lifestyle, we've gone from having a lot more reusable containers, like returning the bottles to the store, to having all of these throwaway containers, and it's not benefiting us. So...
Yeah. All right, Dawn. So we're in the last minute of the show. Thanks so much for coming on. Sorry about some of the technical difficulties we experienced today, but it's been a great conversation, and I hope to have you on again. And since people, we got to know you a little bit, then we can talk to you about a lot of other things that are going on. And so that we can kind of educate people out there of, what lifestyles are and what people are doing and their thoughts and what they're thinking about, and all those kinds of amazing things. So you can find Dawn on her website or Facebook page, which is Peppercorn Ranch Creations. And she's constantly posting different things on there. And then you can message her if you have any questions or you want to talk to her. Or you have, anything nice to say about her being on the show. But go ahead and contact her there. But this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio. And we're at the end, and we will see you on Saturday. And have a great day out there till then. Thanks, Dawn, and we'll see you later.
Thank you.